Emmanuel Williams was 30 years old. He was tall, quiet, and handsome. People called him the billionaire's son. He had everything anyone could dream of: expensive cars, a mansion in Abuja, a foreign education. He had just returned from business school in the UK. But Emmanuel did not feel like he had everything. In fact, he felt very empty. All his life, he had been surrounded by people who pretended to care about him. He was born into great wealth, and that wealth became both a blessing and a curse. Wherever he went, people smiled at him, praised him, and tried to get close to him. But it was always for a reason. Some wanted money, some wanted favors, some just wanted to use his name for attention. The women in his life rarely saw him for who he truly was. Most only saw the name, the power, and the lifestyle. Emmanuel was tired. Tired of fake friendships, tired of gold diggers, tired of being judged for what he had instead of who he was. One quiet morning, Emmanuel stood in the large sitting room of his mansion. The space was quiet, peaceful, and filled with silence. He looked out the wide glass window at the busy city. He was deep in thought when his father, Chief Edward Williams, walked in. His father was the founder and chairman of Noble Rise Holdings, one of the most respected companies in the country. They sat down to talk. Chief Williams looked at his son with pride. "It's time," he said. Emmanuel looked up. "Time for what?" he asked. Chief Williams smiled gently. "I want you to take over Noble Rise," he said. "I'm getting old. I plan to retire soon. You are ready." Emmanuel nodded slowly but did not look excited. Instead, he looked his father in the eyes. "I want to join the company," he said. "But not as your son. Since I haven't been actively involved in the company, I might as well use my anonymity to my advantage." His father raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I want to see what Noble Rise really looks like," Emmanuel said. "Not from the top floor, from the bottom." Chief Williams sat back in his chair. "You want to go in without your name?" "Yes," Emmanuel said. "I want to feel what the workers feel. I want to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching. I want the truth." His father stayed quiet for a while. Then he looked out the window and spoke in a low voice. "There are things happening inside the company that trouble me," he said. "I've heard rumors, not small ones, serious ones. People talk about tribalism, elitism, corruption, sexual harassment, managers mistreating staff, people being fired unfairly. I don't even know who to trust anymore." Emmanuel listened carefully. "I've heard that too, so the rumors are true?" he asked. "I don't know," his father said. "But something is not right." Emmanuel stood up. He looked serious. "Then let me find out," he said. "Let me go in and see it for myself. I will not enter as Emmanuel Williams. I will become someone else." Chief Edward Williams looked at his son with concern. Emmanuel had just told him that he wanted to join Noble Rise as a cleaner to see the truth for himself. But it baffled him. His father leaned forward. "Are you sure you can do it?" he asked. "This is not an easy thing, Emmanuel. You're talking about mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, cleaning up after people who will not even say thank you." Emmanuel nodded. "I know it won't be easy," he said, "but I'm ready." Chief Williams shook his head slowly. "Why not go in as an intern?" he asked. "At least then you can see the daily operations without suffering." Emmanuel smiled. "If I'm doing this, I have to do it right. I want to be invisible. I want to be someone they won't notice. That's the only way I'll know who they really are." His father sighed and looked at him for a long time. "All right," he said finally. "But only you, me, and Samuel will know about this plan. No one else. Do you understand?" "I understand," Emmanuel said. The next day, the boardroom at Noble Rise headquarters was filled with top staff and directors. Chief Edward Williams walked in, calm as always. Everyone sat up straight. He stood at the front of the room and looked around. "I have something to announce," he said clearly. "My son will soon be joining the company. He will take over Noble Rise as I prepare to retire." As soon as he finished speaking, the room changed. People looked at each other. Some smiled. Some looked surprised. "So the CEO's son is coming. He must be proud. I heard he's very handsome. I need to change my hair. He probably won't even look at us." Whispers filled the hallways after the meeting. Some of the female staff began to plan their outfits. A few managers practiced what they would say if they met him. People expected a young man who would walk in like a king, a rich, proud prince. But Emmanuel was already getting ready in a different way. He stood in front of his mirror at home. He trimmed his hair very low. He wore an old shirt with small holes in the sleeve. He picked out a worn-out pair of trousers and bathroom slippers. He rubbed his hands with dust to look rougher. Then he looked in the mirror again. This was not Emmanuel Williams anymore. This was Emmy. He practiced his local accent. It was soft, quiet, and very different from how he normally spoke. That morning, Emmanuel Williams entered Noble Rise for the first time as Emmy, the new cleaner. He walked quietly to the front entrance, but before he could step in, someone shouted, "Hey boy, use the side entrance," said a tall man in a sharp suit. He had a shiny name tag that read Kevin Ocon. "This is not your place. You think you'll just stroll in like staff?" Emmy nodded and walked away without saying anything. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his face calm. Inside the building, cold eyes followed him. Some staff stared as he passed. No one smiled. No one greeted him. One lady shifted her chair as if to avoid him, like he is smelling or something. He was directed to the supervisor's office downstairs. That was where he met Janet. Janet looked at him from head to toe with disgust. "You?" she said. "You look like you've never even held a mop before." She laughed. "Don't waste my time, boy. You better not be lazy. If you're here to look for easy work, go back to where you came from." "Yes, Ma," Emmanuel said softly. Janet handed him a uniform. It was old and stained. "Put this on," she said. "You'll be cleaning floors, toilets, break rooms, and you don't get to rest unless I say so." Emmy nodded again. Later that day, while he was sweeping the hallway, Kevin walked past him again with two other managers. He looked at Emmy and laughed. "Look at this one," Kevin said loudly. "Even the mop is neater than he is. You better clean that floor, boy, or go home." The others laughed with him. Emmy bent down and kept working. He said nothing, but inside he was already learning. This was not just a job, it was a mirror. And very soon the mirror would show people who they truly were. Emmanuel got home late that night. His body was tired. His hands had blisters. His back ached from bending and lifting all day. He sat quietly in the corner of his room, staring at his dusty shoes. His clothes still smelled like bleach and toilet cleaner. There was a soft knock at the door. It was his father. Chief Edward Williams walked in slowly, closed the door behind him, and sat across from his son. "How was your first day?" he asked. Emmanuel looked at him and gave a tired smile. "It was rough," he said. "Most of the people don't even look at me. They talk down to me like I don't exist." His father nodded, listening closely. "Some of the managers are worse than I expected," Emmanuel added. "One of them even called me boy." "Are you okay?" Chief Williams asked. "I'm fine," Emmanuel said. "They look at me like dirt, but it doesn't shake me. I'm not there for comfort. I went for the truth, and I won't give up." The next morning came too quickly. Emmanuel wore his cleaner uniform again. He didn't bother with cologne. He packed no lunch, just a bottle of water and the same quiet courage he carried yesterday. At Noble Rise, no one greeted him. No one noticed when he walked into the staff area with a mop and bucket. He moved like a shadow through the building. He started with the toilets. He scrubbed them carefully, making sure everything was spotless. The smell of bleach filled his nose. He wiped mirrors and picked up tissues people had dropped on the floor. From there, he went to the offices. He swept around people's desks while they acted like he wasn't there. Some rolled their chairs away to avoid him. Some whispered behind his back and laughed when they thought he couldn't hear. As he cleaned near the HR department, he met her, Sheila Abang, the head of human resources. She was tall, proud, and always wore bright lipstick. She looked at Emmanuel like he was beneath her. Sheila took the remains of her lunch, half a plate of rice and bones, and dropped it on the floor near his mop bucket. "Pick that up," she said without looking at him. "That's what you're paid for." Emmanuel bent down and cleaned the mess without saying a word. Sheila watched him for a second, then turned back to her phone. "Cleaner with no energy," she said loudly. "I hope you're not just here for free AC." The people around her laughed. Throughout the day, little things kept happening. Someone left a broken mug on the floor and blamed him for it. A junior staff member told him to mop the floor again.
even though he had just done it. Another one snapped her fingers at him like he was a dog. The worst part was not even the insults. It was the way they looked through him, like he was not even human. But Emmanuel kept working, quietly, patiently, watching, listening. Most people didn't even see him. But one person did, and she was about to change everything. The next day, Emmanuel arrived early. The building was quiet, the air was fresh, and the corridors had not yet filled with noise and footsteps. He wore his uniform again, the same rubber slippers. He pushed his mop bucket through the hallway like the day before. Another shift, another day of being invisible. By mid-morning, he was cleaning around the IT department. As usual, most people didn't notice him. Some turned their chairs away. One man even dropped his empty sachet of water on the floor right in front of him and kept walking. Then something different happened. A soft voice called out to him. "Hi." Emmanuel looked up slowly. A woman stood a few feet away. She had gentle eyes and a calm smile. Her name tag read Lillian Johnson. "I've been seeing you around recently," she said. "You're new here, right?" Emmanuel nodded, a little surprised. "Yes, ma," he said quietly. "No need for ma," she said, smiling. "I'm just Lillian." "What's your name?" "Emmy," he replied. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Emmy," she said. "I'm glad you're here." Emmanuel didn't know what to say. Nobody had spoken to him like this since he started. Not with kindness, not like he mattered. Lillian looked around. Then she lowered her voice. "Don't mind the way some people act around here," she said. "They talk down to anyone they think is beneath them. It's not about you. It's about who they are." She handed him a bottle of cold water. "Here, you look like you need it." Emmanuel took it slowly, still unsure. He thanked her with a small nod. Later that day, while he was cleaning again near the back hallway, Lillian passed by and stopped. "I brought extra lunch," she said, holding out a small food flask. "You can have some. You're probably tired of eating plain bread." Emmanuel hesitated, then took it gently. "Thank you," he said softly. "I don't even know what to say." "Just eat," she said. "That's enough." They sat together on a bench outside near the back wall. She asked him where he was from. He made up a small story about coming from a village outside the city, trying to survive. She nodded, listening without judgment. "You seem smart," she said. "Don't let this place steal your spirit." Her words stayed with him long after she left. For the first time since he started, Emmanuel smiled genuinely. Someone had seen him, not as a poor cleaner, not as dirt, but as a human being. But while that small light warmed his heart, his eyes were still open. He was watching everything. He saw Kevin, the senior manager, walk too close to the younger female staff. He saw how Kevin laughed loudly with them, promised them things, then suddenly changed tone when they didn't laugh back. He saw Janet, the janitor supervisor, shout at an old cleaner because she forgot to clean a corner properly. She called her useless in front of the others, then made her mop the entire hall again while she stood and watched with her arms folded. Emmanuel saw how some staff whispered behind others' backs, spreading lies. He saw how the security guards were spoken to like animals. He saw how office cleaners were treated like trash, punished for things they didn't do, and ignored even when they were sick. He said nothing. But he saw everything. And now he had a reason to keep going. Because while some people treated others like they were nothing, one person, just one, had shown him what real kindness looked like. Days passed, but Lillian's kindness never changed. Whenever Emmanuel passed by the IT department, she would smile at him. Sometimes she gave him food, sometimes she gave him cold water, but most of the time she just spoke to him like he was someone that mattered. She never looked down on him. One afternoon, while Emmanuel was mopping the hallway near the conference room, Kevin walked past with 2 junior staff and stopped when he saw him. "This one again?" Kevin said loudly. "He looks like he was raised in the bush." The people around him laughed. Emmanuel stayed quiet and kept mopping. Kevin shook his head and added, "I bet his parents were barefoot farmers. No wonder he looks like he's never seen a classroom." Just then, Lillian came out of the nearby office. She heard everything. She looked straight at Kevin. "That's uncalled for," she said. "He's working. You don't need to talk to him like that." Kevin turned to her, surprised. "Ah, so he has a protector now. Look at that. Poverty attracts poverty. Birds of the same feather, dirty boy and dirty girl." Janet, who had just walked by, laughed loudly. Even Sheila, the HR head, smiled as she passed. 2 peas in a poor pod, she muttered. Emmanuel looked down at his mop and said nothing, but he saw the fire in Lillian's eyes as she walked away in silence, refusing to argue further. She had stood up for him, even when it made her a target too. That night, back at the mansion, Emmanuel sat quietly on the balcony. The stars were out, but his mind was heavy. He called for Samuel, his trusted driver and only confidant in this secret plan. "Samuel," he said, "I want you to find out more about Lillian Johnson, the IT girl." Samuel nodded. "Yes, sir. By tomorrow morning I'll have something." The next evening, Samuel handed him a small report. Emmanuel sat down and read it slowly. Lillian Johnson, age 26, junior IT staff, lost both parents 5 years ago, lives in a 1-room apartment with her younger sister, works extra hours to pay school fees, often sends part of her salary back to a relative who helped raise her. No complaints, no debts, no bad record. She has nothing, Samuel said softly, but she still smiles at everyone. Emmanuel stared at the paper without saying a word. Then he folded it and placed it in his drawer. That same night, he picked up his phone and made a quiet payment to the school where her sister was enrolled. 6 months of tuition, paid in full. He didn't sign his name. A week later, he saw Lillian outside during break, tapping on her old phone screen. It was cracked and slow. She kept shaking it to get it to respond. That evening, Emmanuel ordered a brand new phone. He added a short note with it. "Keep shining," from a friend. The next morning, the phone was waiting on her desk in a small gift bag. Lillian blinked in surprise when she saw it. She looked around, confused. Then she picked it up slowly and read the note. She smiled softly, eyes watery. "Who brought this?" her colleague asked. "No name," Lillian replied. "Just says a friend." Her friend grinned. "Maybe you have a secret admirer?" Lillian shook her head. "I don't think so. I think it's a silent angel. Whoever it is, God bless them." That day she was quiet. But there was something peaceful about the way she walked, the way she smiled, like someone had finally seen her. Not just her kindness, but her quiet struggle. Emmanuel watched from the hallway. He said nothing. But in his heart, he knew one thing for sure. Lillian deserved every good thing she received, and more. The office was busy that morning. Phones were ringing, keyboards were clicking, people moved around quickly. Emmanuel, still dressed in his cleaner uniform, walked quietly through the halls, pushing his mop bucket as always. No one paid him any attention. That was exactly what he needed. Later that day, while cleaning around the second-floor hallway near the conference rooms, he heard voices coming from an empty meeting room. The door was slightly open. He paused and leaned closer. Inside, he saw Mr. Charles Agadar, one of the top managers at Noble Rise, standing way too close to a young female intern. She looked uncomfortable, her hands folded tightly in front of her. "You know," Charles said, smirking, "you're very lucky to be working here. Most people don't even get a chance to enter this building." The intern didn't speak. She just looked down. Charles stepped closer. "I can help you stay," he said. "You just have to be nice to me." Then he laughed and added, "I practically own this company." Emmanuel froze. His heart started beating faster. Slowly, he pulled out his phone and started recording. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just held the camera steady and captured it all. A few hours later, Emmanuel saw Lillian talking to the same intern near the elevator. The girl looked shaken. Lillian was trying to comfort her. Charles walked past and stopped when he saw them. "Oh, look," he said, smiling coldly. "The brave defender." Lillian turned to him. "She's scared," she said. "You made her feel unsafe." Charles's smile dropped. "Who do you think you are?" he said in a low, sharp voice. "You think anyone will believe you over me? I can break you." He walked away without waiting for a reply. Emmanuel, standing down the hall with a mop in his hand, had seen everything. Later that same day, Charles found Lillian alone in the IT room. He walked in without knocking and leaned on her desk. "You're bold," he said. "I like that." Lillian didn't answer. Charles looked her up and down slowly. "You know, I think all this talk about acting the hero for the intern is just a cover. I think you just wanted my attention." He moved closer. "I can give you more than attention," he whispered, reaching out to touch her waist. Lillian quickly stepped back. "Don't do that," she said, her voice shaking. Charles narrowed his eyes. "So now you're pretending to be innocent," he said. "You think you'll last here if I don't want you to." "I don't need anything from you," she said, standing firm. He leaned in and hissed, "Reject me and see how fast you lose your job." Lillian reported everything to Sheila, the HR head, that same afternoon. She told her everything. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. Sheila sat behind her desk, chewing gum slowly. When Lillian finished, Sheila leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "Maybe you misunderstood him," Sheila said casually. "You're too sensitive. That's how men joke." Lillian stared at her in disbelief. "Just be careful with your words," Sheila added, already looking at her computer screen. "You wouldn't want to make enemies where you work." Lillian walked out with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, back in the lobby, Emmanuel was pushing his cart when Janet called him. "You," she said, pointing. "Come and collect these clothes from my car. Wash and iron them before closing." He looked at her confused. "I'm here to clean the office," he said. "Not personal laundry." Janet frowned. "So you're choosing to disobey me?" "I'm just saying it's not my job," he replied calmly. Without warning, she picked up a bucket of water and threw it all over him in front of the lobby staff. "Next time, do as you're told, boy," she shouted. Everyone laughed. Emmanuel stood there, soaking wet. He didn't say a word. He just picked up his bucket and walked away slowly. He said nothing, but inside, he was boiling. That evening, while cleaning the hallway near the back offices, Emmanuel noticed Charles again. This time, he was speaking to another intern near the storage room. Charles was smiling, standing too close once again. The intern looked nervous. Her arms were crossed tightly. Emmanuel watched from a distance. He couldn't hear every word, but he saw the fear in the girl's face, and that was enough. He clenched his jaw. This was no longer just a company problem. This was personal. After that long, heavy day, Lillian sat outside by the flower bed near the staff canteen. It was quiet, and she finally had a moment to breathe. Emmanuel was cleaning nearby, but when he saw her sitting alone, he slowly walked over. He sat on the edge of the pavement, a small distance from her. She noticed him and smiled a little. "You okay?" he asked gently. Lillian gave a short laugh, but there was no joy in it. "I'm just tired," she said. "Of everything." Emmanuel looked at her. "You can talk to me," he said. "I'm listening." She paused, then nodded slowly. "It's Mr. Charles," she said, lowering her voice. "He's been harassing me, touching me, saying horrible things, just because I spoke up for that intern." Emmanuel stayed quiet, letting her talk. "He came into my office," she said, her voice shaking. "He said I wanted his attention, then tried to touch me. And when I pushed him away, he threatened to get me fired." Emmanuel clenched his hands quietly. "You should report him," he said. "What he's doing is wrong." "I already did," she replied. "I told Sheila." "You know what she said? It is my fault. That I'm too sensitive. That's how men joke." Emmanuel shook his head. "Lillian, you have to keep speaking up. You can't let him win." She looked at him with tired eyes. "You don't understand," she said. "People like me don't get hurt. I'm just a junior staff. They'll protect him. They always do." Emmanuel didn't respond. She was right. He had seen it himself. "And it's not just me," she added. "There are other girls. I've seen the way he touches them, the way he talks to them. But no one says anything. They all just pretend not to see it. Because if they speak, they lose their jobs." She wiped her eyes quickly and stood up. "But I won't let him break me," she said. "I won't give him that power." Emmanuel stood too. He looked at her and nodded. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. She gave him a small smile before walking back inside. The days passed slowly after that. Lillian and Emmanuel continued to grow closer. She would sometimes bring him fruit or a soft drink. Other times they just sat in silence and shared quiet moments that spoke louder than words. Then one afternoon, something happened. Lillian got into the elevator to take a file to the top floor. Just as the doors were about to close, Charles stepped in. She stiffened immediately. He pressed the button, then turned toward her. "So now you avoid me?" he said. Lillian said nothing. She stared at the floor. "I'm just trying to be friendly," he added, stepping closer. "But maybe you like to act like you're better than me now." He tried to touch her inappropriately again. This time, Lillian didn't wait. She slapped him, hard. Charles froze, his face red with shock. Lillian pushed past him just as the elevator doors opened on the next floor and ran down the hall, breathing fast. That same evening, she received an email. Subject, HR notification. You are hereby invited to attend a disciplinary hearing regarding misconduct and aggressive behavior. Lillian sat at her desk in silence, holding her head in her hands. Her hands trembled. Her eyes burned. Emmanuel found her that evening, still sitting in the same spot. They're trying to suspend me, she whispered. Emmanuel said nothing. He simply walked away and pulled out his phone. That night, an anonymous email arrived in the inbox of the HR department, copied to the legal team. It contained audio and written details of Charles Agada's misconduct. The tone was firm and clear. It warned that further failure to protect employees would lead to formal investigations and press exposure. The sender was listed as Internal Ethics Review, Anonymous Report. The next morning, Charles was called in quietly. No one knew what was said behind the door. But after that meeting, he didn't go near Lillian again. For now, he had backed off. But Emmanuel knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. A few days later, a surprising announcement was made at the morning briefing. Lillian Johnson had been promoted. She was now the new project coordinator in the IT department. Along with her promotion came access to a new company apartment and a staff car. The news moved through the building fast. Some congratulated her politely, but most only whispered behind her back. In the break room, at the printers and in the hallways, the same words repeated over and over. How does a junior staff like her get promoted so quickly? She just came here yesterday. There are people who've been here 5 years and nothing. Then Sheila added her own voice to the noise. She must be sleeping with someone upstairs, she said with a smirk, always acting innocent, but look how fast she climbed. Kevin laughed loudly. It's always the quiet ones. Pretend to be humble, then you find them climbing beds to climb ranks. Sheila chuckled. And here I was thinking she was different. Tisk. Shame. The rumors spread like wildfire. Lillian heard them. She heard them in the lift, in the bathroom, even from the security post. She didn't reply. She didn't fight. But she felt it. The stares, the cold shoulders, the fake smiles that vanished the moment she turned around. Her heart felt heavier with each passing day. It was like her hard work meant nothing. Her kindness, forgotten. She began to walk with her head lower. She started eating lunch alone. Even the interns avoided her now. One evening, when the sun was beginning to set, Emmanuel went up to the rooftop to clear his mind. He had just finished mopping the hallway and needed air. When he stepped onto the roof, he stopped. Lillian was there, sitting alone by the water tank. Her shoulders were shaking. She was crying. He walked toward her quietly, his footsteps soft. She didn't hear him until he was close. She quickly wiped her face and turned away. Sorry, she said. I didn't know you also came up here. Emmanuel sat beside her, silent for a moment. I heard what they're saying, he said gently. Lillian laughed sadly through her tears. Of course you have. The whole building has. You don't have to explain anything to me or anyone, he said. I know who you are. But they don't, she whispered. They think I did something wrong, that I seduced someone, that I cheated my way up. And it hurts because I've worked so hard just to survive. Emmanuel looked at her. You don't owe them anything, he said. You showed me more kindness than anyone ever has. You're brave, Lillian. That's why you were lifted. Not because of anything else. She looked at him, eyes red. Thank you, Emmy, she said softly. Sometimes I just wish someone would believe in me, without needing proof. He nodded slowly, hiding the ache in his chest. Because he knew everything she was facing, and he was the reason her life had changed. But he couldn't say that yet. Not now. So he sat with her, quiet, still, just being there. Because sometimes silence is the loudest way to say you care. The rooftop was quieter now. The sun had dropped lower, painting the sky with soft orange light. A cool breeze moved across the building, carrying silence and stories yet to be told. Lillian wiped her face again, her voice softer now. I haven't told anyone this, she began. But life has never been easy for me. Emmanuel turned to her gently, saying nothing, just listening. I lost both of my parents when I was 21, she continued. One sickness after another. No warning, just gone. She paused, looking out at the sky. My younger sister was still in secondary school. I had no job, no support, just pain. I've been doing everything I can to keep us going ever since. Emmanuel listened quietly, his heart sinking with every word. I work during the day, she said. Freelance tech jobs at night. Sometimes I skip meals just to make sure my sister can eat. I've sold my jewelry, my old laptop, even my shoes. Her eyes filled again. But then one day, someone paid her school fees. No name, just a payment. Emmanuel looked down slowly, his throat tightening. Then later I got a phone. Mine was already cracked and slow. But one morning I found a new one on my desk. No name again, just a small card that said from a friend. She gave a small laugh, full of emotion. I don't know who it is. I've prayed for them every night. I call them my silent angel. She looked at Emmanuel with a tired smile, and then the promotion came. Just when I thought things were falling into place, everything else came crashing down. Gossip, hate, judgment, all because something good finally happened to me. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wonder if I even deserve it. Emmanuel couldn't stay quiet anymore. His voice came low and sure. You deserve every good thing coming to you. Lillian looked at him. Her eyes searched his. Why do you care so much? She asked. You barely know me. He swallowed hard. His mind raced. His heart ached to tell her the truth, to say I'm the one who helped you. I'm the reason you're standing here. But instead he looked at her and spoke carefully. Because you're the only real person I've met here. Her face softened. No one else has treated me like a human being. Not since I started here, he said. They call me a poor local boy. They laugh at me, step over me like I'm nothing. But you looked at me. You listened. You cared. She smiled faintly, wiping her eyes again. Maybe that's because I know what it feels like to be invisible. And I also know everyone is important no matter what family they are born into. They both sat quietly, the silence deep and full of meaning. He looked at her and knew in that moment he had already fallen in love with her. Not because of her smile, not because of her kindness, but because of her strength. And now, he didn't know what scared him more. The truth she didn't know about him, or the fear that, if she did know, she might walk away. Emmanuel walked back downstairs after his quiet rooftop moment with Lillian. His mind was full. His heart was heavy. He kept thinking about her words, about the pain she carried, and how he had never expected to care for anyone this deeply. Falling in love was never part of the plan. He came undercover to uncover the truth, to fix his father's company, not to lose his heart to someone who still didn't know who he really was. He was lost in thought when one of the janitors tapped him on the shoulder. HR is asking for you, the man said. Madam Sheila said you should come to her office now. Emmanuel nodded, wiping his hands on his uniform. His mind was still upstairs with Lillian, but he pushed the door to Sheila's office and stepped inside. Sheila sat behind her big glass desk, wearing a bright red blouse and heavy makeup. She didn't look up immediately. She kept clicking on her phone until she finished her message. Then she looked at him and smiled in a way that made him uncomfortable. Close the door, she said. He did. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs. So Emmy, right? She said. That's what they call you? Yes, Ma, he answered, standing straight. She looked him up and down slowly. You know, you're too handsome to be pushing a mop around this building. He said nothing. She smiled wider. Honestly, you don't belong down there. You should be somewhere better. With someone better. Emmanuel kept his face calm, but his hands were tight at his sides. I can help you, Sheila said, her voice lowering. I know people. I can move you up. Office assistant today, personal assistant tomorrow. Who knows, even more. She stood up now, walking slowly toward him, rubbing his hands seductively. You and I, we could change your life. Emmanuel took a small step back. I'm fine where I am, Ma, he said firmly. She raised her eyebrows. Are you saying no to me? He nodded once. Yes, Ma, respectfully. Her face changed quickly. The smile vanished. Of course, she said, turning back to her chair. Of course you'd say no. I should have known. She sat down, her tone turning cold and sharp. I have seen the way you hang around Lillian. You think she's special? You think that one is clean? Emmanuel's chest tightened. She's not what you think, Sheila continued. Always acting innocent. She's been sleeping her way up.
You think that promotion came from hard work? Wake up, boy. He stepped forward slightly, his voice low. You shouldn't speak about her like that. Sheila rolled her eyes. I'm HR. I know everything that happens in this company. And I've seen her type before. Soft voice, big eyes, full of tricks. You'll learn the hard way. Emmanuel said nothing else. He turned around and walked out of the office, but inside his blood was boiling. He walked down the hallway without looking at anyone. His fists were clenched, his jaw was tight. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell her who he really was, to fire her right there and then. But he didn't. Not yet, because Judgment Day was coming, and when it arrived, nobody would be spared. The next morning felt different. The sun still rose, people still clocked in. But Emmanuel's heart was heavy. He was quiet, focused, watching. He knew the time was near. He had seen enough. But there was still one more storm to pass. While sweeping the hallway near the executive wing, he heard Janet's sharp voice behind him. "Emmy!" she barked. "You missed a spot, or are you already tired for the day?" He turned back quietly and swept the corner again. Kevin passed by and smirked. Ah, our celebrity cleaner, still holding that mop like it's a staff of honor. Janet laughed. "You should thank us for giving you purpose in life." Emmanuel said nothing. He kept sweeping. Lillian came out from a side office and saw what was happening. She walked straight up to them. "That's enough," she said. "You can't keep talking to him like that. He's working, and he's a human being. Treat him like one." Kevin rolled his eyes. "And here comes his bodyguard." Janet folded her arms, always defending the poor. Maybe it's true what people say. Then, from behind, Sheila walked in. She looked at the group and narrowed her eyes at Lillian. "You again?" Sheila said. Still trying to be the office saint, Lillian stood her ground. "If speaking up for someone who's being mistreated makes me a problem, then yes, I'm proud to be one." Sheila walked up slowly and slapped Lillian across the face. "How dare you talk back at me, you poor dirty little thing," Sheila shouted. The sound echoed through the hallway. Kevin laughed out loud. Janet chuckled and shook her head. Emmanuel froze. That was it. The last line had been crossed. Without saying a word, he dropped the mop, walked over to Lillian, and gently took her hand. She was holding her cheek, shaking, but she looked up at him, confused. "Come with me," he said quietly. He didn't wait for her response. He just held her hand and walked out of the hallway, past the stairs, past the whispers, past the fake smiles. He didn't say anything to Sheila. He didn't look back at Kevin. He didn't even speak to Lillian. He was done. The mask had stayed on long enough. It was time. As the door closed behind them, Janet scoffed. "Good riddance to bad rubbish." Sheila snorted. "Let them go. The company just got cleaner without a cleaner." They both laughed. They had no idea. Their time was already up. The following day began like any other. Staff came in and sat at their desks. Emails flew back and forth. The scent of coffee filled the air. But by mid-morning, something changed. Word spread like fire. The chairman was in the building. Chief Edward Williams had arrived without warning. His black official SUV rolled up to the front entrance. Guards stood straighter. Staff rushed to fix their shirts and smooth their hair. The elevators were held open. The entire building shifted into panic mode. "He's here," someone whispered. "Why today?" "I heard he's going to announce the new CEO." "No one comes like this without a reason." Everyone started guessing. "It's definitely Mr. Charles," someone said. "He's been preparing for this day," others argued. "No, it's the CEO's son. I heard he just returned to the country, a handsome billionaire." While they speculated, Charles adjusted his tie 3 times and practiced a smile in the mirror. He stood taller. Today, he believed, was his day. Meanwhile, Sheila reapplied her lipstick, and Janet made sure she was close to the conference area, just in case names were called. People who had never spoken to each other before suddenly became friendly. Staff who barely noticed the cleaners now offered weak smiles to every janitor who passed. Then the email arrived. All staff to report to the main conference hall, urgently. The entire company gathered. The hall was full, standing room only. Chief Edward stood at the front, calm, still, strong. Behind him stood members of the board. No one smiled. The room was heavy with suspense. Chief Edward took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. he said. You could hear a pin drop. For some time now, he continued, I have been watching this company, listening, observing, and I came to a decision. Murmurs began. Charles stood straighter, ready. Today, the chairman said, I want to introduce someone, a man who has walked among you these past few weeks. Heads turned. Whispers started again. He raised his hand to silence the crowd. He has been insulted, mocked, ignored, and humiliated. And yet he did not complain. He watched. He listened. And what he saw opened all our eyes. He paused. Please welcome my son, Emmanuel Williams. Gasps filled the room. The side doors opened, and in walked a tall, handsome young man in a dark blue tailored suit, his hair trimmed neatly, his walk calm and firm. It was Emmy. Only now he wasn't holding a mop. He wasn't wearing rubber slippers. He was the heir. Janet's eyes widened. She sat down heavily in the nearest chair, speechless. Sheila's mouth fell open. She blinked fast like she had seen a ghost. Kevin took a small step backward and nearly tripped. Mr. Charles stammered quietly. That can't be. No, this is a joke. The staff were frozen. No one moved. Some began whispering in fear. Others looked away, ashamed. Emmanuel stood beside his father, silent for a moment. His eyes moved across the crowd, calm but focused. He had been the cleaner. He had been the shadow. Now, he was the storm. And no one in that room would forget this day. All eyes were fixed on Emmanuel as he stood beside his father. No one spoke. Even breathing seemed softer. Then Emmanuel stepped forward and took the microphone. For weeks, he said calmly, I worked here as a cleaner. Many of you walked past me. Some of you insulted me. A few tried to destroy me. He paused, letting his words sink in. I saw who you really are when you thought I was no one. The room remained silent. Not a single phone buzzed. Not a single paper rustled. Emmanuel turned to one of the board members who handed him a small speaker and his phone. He pressed play. Charles's voice filled the room. I own this company, the recording said. You just have to be nice to me. Warm my bed. Then came the threats, the mocking, the moment Charles cornered the intern. Gasps echoed across the hall. One board member looked down, shaking his head in disgust. Another recording followed, Charles threatening Lillian. As the final recording ended, Emmanuel looked straight at Charles. For sexual harassment, abuse of power, and theft, Emmanuel said, you are hereby fired from Noble Rise Holdings. Security officers stepped forward. Charles tried to speak, but nothing came out. His hands shook. One of the officers leaned in and whispered something to him. Charles's face drained of color. He was not only being fired, he was being arrested. He had been under investigation, and today, it ended. He was escorted out in handcuffs. The room watched in stunned silence. Then Emmanuel turned to Kevin. For spreading false rumors, for public mockery, and for enabling a toxic work environment, you are hereby dismissed. Kevin's face turned red. He tried to open his mouth, but no one was listening. Then Emmanuel turned to Sheila. For failing to protect female employees, for gaslighting victims of harassment, and for abusing your power, he said, you are also dismissed, effective immediately. Sheila stood frozen. She didn't argue. She just looked down. Finally, Emmanuel looked at Janet. For mistreating the janitorial team, for humiliating workers, for throwing water on a fellow human being, Janet looked up, shaking. You are hereby demoted to assistant janitor and placed under compulsory retraining in ethics and emotional intelligence. She opened her mouth and then closed it again. Emmanuel looked her in the eye. Respect is not for the rich. It's human. Let this be a lesson for you all. The crowd stayed silent. Then Chief Edward Williams stepped forward beside his son. He placed a firm hand on Emmanuel's shoulder. I could not be more proud, he said. Today, leadership passed from my hands to his, and I have no doubt it is in better hands than mine. Father and son embraced in front of everyone. The applause started slowly. One clap, then two, and then it filled the room. Not forced, not fake. Real. Outside, employees began to whisper again, but this time there was no gossip. No malice, only admiration. Maybe he's not what we expected. He saw everything, and still chose kindness. A new era is here.
And it was. The storm had passed, and the sun was finally shining on Noble Rise. The air in the conference hall was different now. The fear had lifted. The tension had broken. But what remained was a deep silence, one of reflection, one of truth. Emmanuel stood before the staff, still holding the microphone. He looked around the room at faces that now saw him clearly, not as Emmy the cleaner, but as Emmanuel Williams, the man who had walked among them, seen their actions, and felt their attitudes. He took a deep breath. "I came here not just to lead Noble Rise," he began. "I came here to understand it. Many people in this company are excellent at their jobs. Many are hardworking, honest, and loyal, but they were being ignored, mistreated, and silenced." He paused, his voice steady and sincere. "Respect is not something reserved for those with fancy titles or corner offices. It belongs to everyone. Janitor, intern, secretary, manager, CEO. The room was still. No phones rang. No one looked away. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching, and too many here forgot that someone was watching." He looked directly at the faces of employees who had mocked him, insulted him, and doubted others. "That ends today," he said. He then turned toward the board of directors seated at the front row. "This company will go through restructuring. Anonymous feedback channels will be launched. No one will be afraid to speak up again. Ethics and human dignity will no longer be optional. They will be our foundation." Murmurs of agreement moved softly through the crowd. Then something unexpected happened. At the far corner of the room, Lillian had just stepped in. She had been quietly summoned to the hall minutes earlier, not knowing why. She now stood frozen by the wall, her eyes wide in shock as she listened to every word Emmanuel said. Then Emmanuel turned toward her. "There's someone here," he said clearly, "who reminded me of what this company is meant to stand for." Lillian blinked in confusion. She is someone who, even in her own personal pain, showed kindness. Not just to me, but to everyone she could. She didn't help me because she thought I was important. She helped me because it was right. And even when others mocked her for it, she stood firm. Lillian's hand slowly moved to cover her mouth. "I am proud to say that Lillian Johnson has been promoted, not because she was kind, but because she was excellent, because she deserved it, because she contributed real work and real value to this company." People began to nod. A few clapped. Emmanuel smiled softly. "And starting today, she is officially being offered a permanent leadership role on our executive innovation team." Lillian's hands trembled. She took a small step forward, stunned. For a moment she couldn't move. He looked at her gently. "You may not have known it then, Lillian," he said, "but someone was watching, and I saw everything." The entire room stood and clapped now, not because they were told to, but because it was right. Emmanuel raised his hand slightly, and the applause quieted. "And I promise you," he continued, his voice filled with strength, "every other staff member who has worked with integrity but gone unnoticed will now be seen. The days of silent suffering are over. From this day forward, we rise together or not at all." The room erupted. It wasn't noise. It was a release, a beginning, a healing. And from the side of the stage, Lillian stood wiping her eyes, watching a man she had once called Emmy become everything she never imagined. She didn't know where things between them would go next. But one thing was sure, everything had changed. And for the first time in a long time, it had changed for the better. Later that day, the sun had set over Abuja. The Noble Rise building was quiet now. The halls that had been filled with whispers and tension just hours ago were now still, peaceful. In a private rooftop restaurant reserved for special guests, a table for two had been set. The lights were soft. A gentle breeze moved the curtains as city lights twinkled in the distance. Emmanuel stood near the table, waiting. When Lillian stepped out of the elevator and onto the rooftop, she paused for a moment. She looked different tonight. Not because of her dress or the way her hair framed her face, but because for the first time, she was standing in a world that had finally recognized her worth. He walked up to her slowly, holding out his hand with a quiet smile. "Thank you for coming," he said. She took his hand gently. "I wasn't sure what this was," she said softly. "I owe you an apology," Emmanuel said, guiding her to the table. "For everything. For not telling you the truth. For letting you think I was just a cleaner when I was, well, me." She looked at him with calm eyes. "You may have been hidden," she said. but your heart was always visible." He blinked, surprised. "You're not angry?" She shook her head gently. "No. You never lied to hurt me. You were looking for something real. And you found it. So did I." There was a pause. A soft moment of silence where they just looked at each other. "I also know now, though I couldn't have guessed it before," she added with a small smile, "that you paid my sister's fees, that you gave me the phone, the flowers. You were the one who changed everything for me." He smiled shyly. "You figured that out? I'm not blind." She laughed quietly. "And you might just be that hidden angel after all." He laughed too, then grew quiet again. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "I came undercover to fix the company, to find the truth. I never expected to feel something. But Lillian," he looked directly into her eyes, "I've fallen in love with you." She looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled softly. "I feel the same," she whispered. "I don't care if you're Emmy or Emmanuel Williams. I only care about who you are. And I know who you are. You are the person who comforted me when I was at my lowest." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Slowly, gently, he leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their lips touched in a quiet kiss. There were no fireworks, just peace, and a promise without words, that even after all the lies, masks, and pain, they had found something real. Months passed. The dust had settled at Noble Rise, and the company felt like a new place. Gone were the whispers, the fear, the favoritism. In their place were fairness, structure, and respect. People greeted each other differently now. They walked with heads higher, not because of power, but because of dignity. And through it all, Emmanuel and Lillian were still quietly growing together. They kept their relationship private at first. No grand announcements, no office gossip, just shared moments, late dinners, walks through gardens, quiet laughter on long drives, weekends at the beach, barefoot in the sand, far away from the world that once judged them both. Emmanuel was still leading Noble Rise, but this time with a heart shaped by truth and love. And Lillian? She was blooming. In her new role on the executive innovation team, her ideas were shaping real change. Her confidence had returned, not because someone gave it to her, but because she earned it. Then came the day he had been waiting for. The sun was just beginning to set at a quiet beach. The sky was orange and gold. The waves kissed the shore gently, and the breeze was warm and soft. Emmanuel led her down to the sand. Just the two of them. No cameras, no crowd. He paused near a small setup. Candles, a white cloth, and seashells arranged in a circle. She looked around, confused. Then he turned to her. "I came undercover to this company to find out who people really were," he said. "To see if Noble Rise still had any truth left in it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "But I found something more than truth. I found something greater than any policy, any promotion. I found you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know love like this existed," he said, "but you showed me." Then, with the ocean behind him and the future in front of him, he knelt down. "Lillian Johnson," he said softly, "will you marry me?" She was crying before he finished the sentence. Her hands covered her mouth. Then she nodded through her tears and whispered the only word he wanted to hear. "Yes." He stood, placed the ring on her finger, and they embraced as the sun dipped below the water. Back at Noble Rise, change continued. Strict harassment and tribalism policies were now in full force. An anonymous complaint system had been launched. Monthly ethics training was now part of every department. Emmanuel led with transparency and heart. Lillian, by his side, brought the voice of the people into every boardroom meeting. Together, they didn't just lead, they transformed. At the company's annual staff summit, Emmanuel stood on stage to give the closing speech. The crowd was silent as he looked across the room. So many faces, so many stories. Then he said, "Character is who you are when no one is watching. This company will reward that, nothing else. We will rise together or not at all." The room filled with applause, not out of duty but out of belief. Noble Rise had become more than a company. It had become a family. And for Emmanuel and Lillian, what started as a test of loyalty ended with the discovery of something priceless, not just a better company, but a love that had survived silence, judgment, and masks, and came out stronger on the other side.